In what ways do our mundane shopping habits impact both the people and the world around us? Let me propose some thoughts to aid in finding an answer. I hope we could all agree that a world without hunger, abuse, or pollution would be a much better place. And that if the cure to all corruption was attainable by the mere push of a button, we would be the first ones to push it. So wait, what does any of this have to do with clothing or the fashion industry? Well, if you've agreed with me thus far, then you'll like where I'm going with this. Because there is no beauty even in the nicest clothes if they create hunger and unhappiness. You see, clothes aren't free. Somewhere, someone is paying. Now, you might be thinking, yeah, me the other day when I bought that $20 pair of shorts. But no, I'm talking about an innocent adolescent who is overworked and underpaid. Or what about the single moms that must accept an absurd hourly wage as their only source of income? Or what about the environment? The green grass that reminds us of spring, the very air we breathe, the things in life that you and I are so quick to take for granted will soon vanish if we're not careful. It's time we stop frivolously buying new clothes at the expense of other individuals and the environment. We must acknowledge that society's desire for immediate, cheap, and fleeting trends has led to a surge in the fast fashion industry, putting both human lives and the environment in turmoil. Today, I will discuss the history of the fashion industry and how fashion has become what we know of it today. Then, I will inform you of the harmful impacts of sweatshops, slave, and child labor. Third, I will address how detrimental fast fashion is to the environment. And finally, I will discuss both the importance of this issue and the relevance of this topic for all people, especially Christians, with hopes of evoking a change in the way you shop. For better or for worse, clothing plays a role in the daily lives of individuals worldwide. After all, clothes are a necessity. And if they are a necessity, then why not create multitudes of cute, cheap, and stylish ones, right? Why not fill our closets so that we have an abundance of outfit options every morning? Well, let us not get ahead of ourselves here, because the fashion industry has not always been the way that it is today. Simply put, fashion in the 1900s was easy. So before we delve into fashion as we know of it today, let us take a look at the history of this powerful, ever-changing industry. Prior to the World Wars, clothing consisted of simple color schemes such as black, ivory, or navy with minimal fit options. For example, a V-neck t-shirt, a slim-fit pair of joggers, or a pair of boot-cut jeans would have sounded foreign. A shirt, a skirt, or a pair of pants was the norm. Fortunately for individuals of the early 1900s, limited options meant superb quality. This was because clothes held value, and people cared about them. Through the early 1920s, most clothing was repaired, mended, tailored to fit other family members, or even recycled within the home as rags or quilts. Unfortunately, the spirit of conservation did not last long, and by the mid-1920s, consumerism was back in style. This meant that buying more products was encouraged, and so was the disposal of unwanted ones. To put this into perspective, today less than 2% of what you and I spend on our clothing goes to their repair and cleaning. Instead, we throw or give them away. So how did the industry change? Well, the Industrial Revolution sparked a surge in mass production, making it possible for exponential growth in the fashion industry. And as the Industrial Revolution became more predominant, the demand for clothes went up, and so did the rate at which they could be produced. This was a monumental point in history, because little did the people of the time know just how out of hand mass production would soon become. Its expansion would rapidly affect many aspects of life, going on to eventually consume more than just the desires of the citizens. After World War II, economic growth came to depend on continued marketing of new products and disposal of old ones. These changes in the pace of society have led to the fashion we know today. It's called fast fashion. This term refers to a large sector of the fashion industry whose business model relies on cheap and speedy production of low-quality clothing which gets pumped quickly through stores in order to meet the latest and newest trends. So now that we have a better understanding of how the fashion industry has become what we know of it today, let us take a look at some rather concerning facts that stores like Old Navy and H&M aren't so quick to release. In order to be more profitable, the fashion industry exploits workers through both low wages and child labor. I'm sure you've heard of sweatshops before, but what exactly are they? Well, according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, a sweatshop is a shop or factory in which employees work for long hours at low wages and under unhealthy conditions. You might be thinking that you would never support such an evil industry. Yet we all subconsciously do. So how? Well, it is because consumers thrive off of the instant gratification that fast fashion brings. These quick and cheap pieces of clothing leave people desiring more. However, $6 t-shirts do not grow on trees. There are hands behind the work. Hands that belong to a child who woke up this morning in Cambodia and headed straight to the factory where workers' wages are amongst the lowest in the world and where there is minimal regulation of safety standards or labor rights. Take a look at these charts. According to figures from the U.S. National Labor Committee, some Chinese workers make as little as 12 to 18 cents per hour. In Bangladesh, the average sweatshop worker makes 13 cents per hour. In Vietnam, 26 cents per hour. And Costa Rica, with the highest average hourly wage for apparel workers, $2.38 per hour. Think about it. These hourly wages serve as a life sentence. Every cent that a sweatshop worker makes must go towards supporting their basic living conditions. In other words, when working at a sweatshop, you are imprisoned to your job with a hopeless future of ever making enough money to get out. This labor-intensive work at such low wages creates an unhealthy environment for everyone involved. Unfortunately, these horrific truths do not end there, because poor hourly wages is only one of many ways that sweatshops hold their workers captive. Another way the fashion industry devalues human life is through child labor, because children are as young as 6 or 7 years old when they begin working in these factories for up to 16 hours per day. By beginning work at such young ages, these children's lives are often cut short due to their overexposure of harmful chemicals and excessive labor that they must endure all day, every day. Rise McKay, in his article titled "The Truth Behind the Alleged Nike Sweatshop," correlates a shorter life expectancy with the harmful chemicals and intense heat found in these factories. Child labor is unhealthy and toxic. Sometimes it is even deadly. McKay continues in his article by explaining the ways in which Nike avoids getting caught, by saying they have little to do with the working conditions in these factories because they're subcontracted. Meaning, Nike avoids getting into legal trouble by hiring someone who will then hire the workers from the factories so that Nike themselves do not have to. Although it is technically legal, Nike is still supporting the horrific abuses of child labor through this process. So after hearing how the fast fashion industry exploits workers, you might be wondering why this information and these statistics are not more prevalent in our world today. Because after all, maybe if the horrors of the industry were common knowledge, it would provoke a change in the way consumers shop. Personally, I believe that Americans are quick to dismiss what really takes place in the fashion industry for a variety of reasons. First, I believe that people are uneducated regarding this topic. After all, more than half of my own closet is filled with clothes that originated in sweatshops. That is the case solely because prior to writing this speech, I never took the time to truly research or acknowledge who and what I am supporting with my business. Secondly, I believe that at times the truths of the fast fashion industry sound absurd or even seem unimaginable. And because of that, people are quick to think, well, surely that does not really happen. Or worse, our selfish inclinations kick in and we find ourselves thinking, well, I like cheap clothes and changing the way I shop sounds like it would take an awful amount of time and research. And sometimes we're just simply closed-minded and unwilling to explore other options. Allow me to further my thoughts regarding this topic in hopes of educating you enough to care about forming an opinion on the fast fashion industry. The fast fashion industry's ideology of buying cheap to discard fast makes their wasteful production of clothes and use of harmful chemicals detrimental to the environment. Fast fashion devastates the environment through both the production and the lifespan of their products. Take a look at the damaging effects that stem from the harmful chemicals alone. Polyester, cotton, and nylon are 3 of the most commonly used materials in the fashion industry. Polyester is made through an energy-intensive process requiring large amounts of crude oil and releasing emissions, including volatile organic compounds, which are air pollutants, particulate matter, which corrodes the lungs, and acid gases, all of which cause or aggravate respiratory diseases. And cotton alone accounts for 1/4 of all the pesticides used in the United States. According to the technical textile market, the rise in production in the fashion industry and demand for man-made fibers has nearly doubled in the last 15 years. Sadly, the increase in production means only more and more harmful chemicals will be used. And as we continue to produce more clothes, we continue to produce more waste. Let's put this into perspective. Have you ever experienced a little, I own 10 pairs of jeans, but I only ever seem to wear 2 of them situation? Well, how has the fashion industry subconsciously convinced individuals that this is okay? You see, it is because of consumerism. Consumerism proposes that it is economically desirable to continue purchasing goods. But what happens when your closet reaches max capacity, or winter turns into spring and it's time to change what's on your hangers? Take a listen to this. The number of times that an item of clothing is worn before disposal has decreased by 36% since 2007. In other words, 1 garbage truck full of clothes is either being incinerated or sent to the landfill every second. That is enough waste to fill 1.5 Empire State Buildings daily. And since 2000, clothing sales per year have doubled. Designers intentionally create these cheap pieces of clothing to rapidly come in and out of style because it leaves consumers feeling as though they are slaves to the latest trends. It's time to wake up. Time to take initiative, and time to have some integrity about the human lives behind the clothes we wear and the protection of our earth. Fast fashion will not fix itself. This problem requires our action if we want to avoid disaster. Overall, humanity's insatiable desire for more urges individuals to buy more, causing them to subconsciously support the detrimental effects of the fashion industry. So now that we've discussed the history of the fashion industry, the impacts of sweatshops, slave, and child labor, let's consider a few well-known brands and their impacts on society. As I'm sure many of you would probably assume, stores like Old Navy, H&M, Forever 21, and Shein are all fast fashion brands. A researcher by the name of Remy Khan acknowledged fast fashion amongst these brands because in a marketed shift away from the traditional cycle of 2 fashion seasons a year, these brands produce dozens of micro-seasons, with new styles appearing on shelves every week. These micro-seasons produce excessive amounts of waste. But what about stores like American Eagle, Hollister, or Target? Unfortunately, for the sake of time, we cannot examine the sustainability of every brand. So for now, let's take a closer look at Target. Although I do not support everything that Target stands for, they are surprisingly open regarding their goals for a more sustainable future, meaning you can find information all over their website regarding their products and desires. Although I did not spend a ton of time researching American Eagle or Hollister, I do know that a simple Google search such as "Is American Eagle a fast fashion brand?" did not generate many results, either good or bad. And typically when a company is working toward well-paid workers and eco-friendly products, they like to be pretty vocal about it. Because after all, no one should have to spend a ton of time doing extensive research to gain a general understanding of a business's motives. With that being said, Target desires to supply both affordable and convenient products that will better their customers' lives. Target's corporate website states, "Our commitment to providing these options for guests to live and to lean into their own sustainability journeys begins with our sourcing practices and policies, both for people and for the environment." They are doing this by designing and developing brands of their own which they have control over. Universal Threads, Spritz, Cat & Jack, to name a few. Target has also developed household brands such as Everspring and Westpaw. This makes sustainable, one-stop shopping more convenient as the product lines carry everything from laundry detergent to dog toys to toilet paper. When we as consumers support sustainable brands at larger corporations, we show the company where the demand lies. On the other hand, it is understandable that the idea of sustainable fashion is a daunting topic for the average individual. After all, maybe hearing the words sustainable fashion immediately floods your mind with pricey pieces of clothing that can only be found on specific websites. Well, thankfully, there are a plethora of solutions to these concerns. Solutions such as thrifting clothes, researching sustainable fashion brands, or simply accepting that more is not always merrier. Less clothes might actually make you happier. Can you believe it? Imagine throwing on a sweatshirt knowing where and by whom it was made. Thankfully, this is now possible because there are more sustainable fashion brands than the average individual is aware of. Granted, they do have slightly more expensive prices, the sustainable fashion industry is rapidly expanding as people become more and more aware of the horrors found within the fast fashion industry. Not to mention that as the sustainable market's demand for clothes goes up, costs will drop as a result of more efficient production. But unfortunately, the costliness and minimal availability is what deters most people from shopping sustainably. Not everyone can or wants to spend $60 on a sweatshirt. Or worse, $120 on a pair of leggings, right? I would have to admit that prior to writing this speech, I felt the same way. Because sometimes I need a new pair of shorts and running to Old Navy to grab that $8 pair sounds appealing. It's easy to take the cheap and quick way out. That is when we must remember that shopping sustainably is a daily decision and a choice that only you can make for your life. Eventually, it will become your lifestyle, but until then, we have to choose it. Not to mention that a sustainable wardrobe takes time to create. It takes one piece of clothing at a time. Okay, wait, so what about those $60 sweatshirts? Because I don't know about you, but I'm still caught up on those prices. Well, what about the $2,000 that the average American spends on clothing annually? It's all about how you look at it. Buy 20 chintzy t-shirts, or buy a few extremely nice durable shirts. Both are building your wardrobe. If everyone was to sit down and total up their clothing purchases, I think they would be rather amazed by just how quickly their cheap clothes add up. Admittedly, shopping sustainably means you will not own as many clothes. But that's the point. We don't need as much stuff as we think we do. And would it seem surprising to you if I said that sustainable brands are not something that only far-out earth-loving vegans talk about? Or that sustainability is not geared towards the hikers and the climbers of the population? As the sustainable fashion industry continues expanding, clothes are being developed for all kinds of people with all interests and hobbies. I encourage you to spend some time today researching brands like Patagonia, Ten Tree, and Melanzana. And once again, if the cost seems overwhelming, you have options. Patagonia has even provided a link on their website titled Worn Wear, which allows customers to rehome their clothes at significantly cheaper prices. My hope is that having acknowledged some brands throughout this speech, you will desire to further your research about them. So, as I begin to wrap up my thoughts regarding the cruelty found within the fast fashion industry, I want to leave you with my personal beliefs on the relevance of this topic among Christians. So why should this topic matter, especially to Christians? Well, throughout the entirety of the Bible, God places special responsibilities on His people. His people are required to care for the land as seen in Genesis, and to care for their bodies by treating them well. In 1 Corinthians 3:16, Paul says, "Don't you know that you yourselves are God's temple and that God's Spirit dwells in your midst?" This message emphasizes both the importance and the impact of a Christian's life in this world. The brands we choose to support have the ability to either devalue or greatly impact ourselves, the planet, and the hands behind the work. Consider the second greatest commandment. Mark 12:31 says, "You shall love your neighbor as yourself." So before we are so quick to support the fast fashion industry, we must consider our brothers and sisters in Christ who are working behind the scenes for the sake of our clothes, which are all temporary, worldly, material items anyways. Imagine a full closet of nice, durable, eco-friendly clothes. Not to mention, you can rest assured knowing that whoever made that favorite t-shirt of yours is well paid. However, as we wrap up, I want you to know that I understand how shopping sustainably may seem overwhelming. Fortunately, there are plenty of sources to help. Overall, try to buy well-made clothes that you care about. To put this into perspective, I conducted an interview with a good friend and owner of a local small business. Today, her business is expanding like never before. But get this, It all began from her thrifting sweatshirts, hand sewing a cute saying on it, and then selling it. Let's use that as an inspiration to get creative with sustainability. Or if you're still feeling overwhelmed, start today by simply reducing how many different loads of laundry you do. Or try letting your clothes air dry. Head to the nearest thrift store and give some clothing a second home. Or if you're not the thrift store type, then spend some time researching the brands that you do choose to support with your business. There are even apps like Poshmark or ThreadUp, which are higher-end clothes finding a second home. Lastly, I challenge you all to download the app called Good On You, which is an ethical fashion app that acts as a search engine for sustainable brands. Together, let's take everything we looked at today and apply it in order to make the world a better place, one piece of clothing at a time.